If you are trying to lose weight with intermittent fasting and it ain't working, today I'm going to be talking about the 7 possible contenders for things you might be doing wrong. Not only have I seen my clients make some of these mistakes, I personally have made some of these mistakes. And who am I? My name is Heather Schucker. I'm a nurse practitioner turned health coach. I coach for the fasting method, and I specifically help people lose weight with intermittent fasting. Not only that, I personally have lost 80 pounds by changing my diet and doing intermittent fasting. So I have been there. So let's get started. It might sound like this first thing is the biggest mistake people make, but actually the seventh thing is the biggest mistake I see. The first thing is you might not be fasting long enough. I already said I'm a healthcare provider, but I'm not your healthcare provider. So you got to make sure you do what's safe for you. But ultimately, out there, people think of intermittent fasting as kind of just not eating breakfast. So doing an 18-6 or a 16-8 fast, which means only having lunch and dinner, that is not enough for most people. Now, it might be enough for some people, people without a lot of weight to lose. But if you're like the clients that come to me, which tends to be women over 40 with more than 40 pounds to lose, getting down to eating just twice a day is not usually what it takes to get a significant amount of weight loss, especially if you need to lose upwards of 50 or 100 pounds. So, how much fasting is required? Really, that depends on you. It depends on your level of insulin resistance, how much extra body fat you have, how long you've had it. Lots of factors go into it. So, generally, we start lower and then we increase as necessary. For me, it required 3 by 42, which means that I did not eat 3 days a week on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And that is how I was able to lose a significant amount of weight quickly. Some people can get away with doing 24-hour fasts, meaning going from dinner to dinner a few days a week. But that tends to be with people with less weight to lose, maybe under 20 or 25 pounds. The more weight you have to lose, it's probably going to require a longer amount of fasting. The reason for that is we're not actually losing the weight. It's not like we're misplacing it somewhere. We've got to burn it off. And our body has no reason to tap into body fat for fuel if we're eating frequently. And it might not sound like twice a day is eating frequently, but for someone with a whole lot of body fat that they have to use up, it is. Interestingly, the number 2 mistake people can make is that they're actually fasting too much. The way that I usually see this play out is people decide, oh, it's really easy to do a 24-hour fast, meaning to only eat dinner in a day. So then they just do that. Every single day, they just eat dinner day after day after day. I personally made that mistake. When I started fasting, that's what I did. And at first, it was amazing. It worked great. But after a while, what happens is your body acclimates to that level of intake and your metabolism slows down, thereby putting fat loss to an absolute stop, which is also what happened to me. Basically, what you're doing is putting yourself in a state of calorie restriction, which does work on the short term, but on the long term, it doesn't seem to be an effective strategy. So, alternating between fasting and eating days seems to be the more powerful approach. The third thing you might be doing wrong is just eating too much. And I don't mean that as far as eating too frequently, I mean actual just too much food. And I think the reason this happens is when people go low carb, keto, carnivore, all those influencers are saying, it's all about the hormones, so you can eat as much as you want. It is all about the hormones, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can eat as much as you want because some of us eat a lot even if our hormones are not the reason why. Some of us eat for reasons other than hunger. So we're doing it for pleasure, we're doing comfort eating, things like that. And sometimes that quantity is just a little bit too high. Again, when we are losing weight, we're tapping into body fat for fuel. And so, if on our eating days or during our meal times, we have a lot of energy going into our mouths, our body has no reason to tap into our body fat for fuel. Number 4 might sound like number 2, but it's actually a different thing. Number 4 is you're not eating enough. And that might sound like over fasting, but sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes people are just trying to diet and fast at the same time, and that just doesn't work. So they're doing therapeutic fasting protocols like the one I did. They're fasting 3 days a week. But when they're eating on their eating days, even if they're eating, 2 or 3 meals on their eating days, they're trying to do low calorie, low fat, low carb, low energy. And so they're again putting themselves into that calorie restricted, lowered metabolism space. One of the reasons why alternate day fasting works so well is that the body doesn't acclimate to a calorie restricted state. So it's important on eating days to make sure that you're getting enough, just not too much. Number 5, your sleep is garbage. Unfortunately, having poor sleep leads to insulin resistance. It leads to higher cortisol and it makes losing body fat more difficult. So, getting good sleep can be very critical for weight loss. Similarly, number 6, if you are a walking stress ball, you are also going to have a hard time losing weight. Again, high cortisol, which is what you have if you're in a constant stress state, is a killer for fat loss. It makes you more insulin resistant. Not only that, it makes it less likely that you're going to eat in such a way that you are going to lose weight. Many of us who struggled with our weight in the past tend to do things like comfort eat and stress eat, and we're usually not picking the healthiest choices. So when our stress is out of control, we kind of lose our momentum and lose our motivation to eat well. And that leads to problematic eating behaviors that is not conducive to weight loss. I like to say stress management is weight management because, in my experience, the people that really struggle with falling off the wagon over and over again, even if they know what they need to be do, they just can't make themselves keep doing it because life keeps getting in the way. They need a better stress management strategy, something that they're a little bit more proactive with. In my opinion, one of the best ways we can be very proactive about our stress management is to exercise regularly. And I recommend that across the board to my clients. Again, you got to make sure it is safe for you to do so and contact your healthcare provider. But exercise is an excellent stress management tool. I also happen to be a very strong proponent of meditation. And before we get to the biggest culprit in preventing weight loss, I do want to touch on the fact that there are some medical conditions, some hormonal imbalances and things that can get in the way of weight loss. If you think that that's something that's happening to you, you should really get the blood work and the testing done to get that figured out for yourself. Also, if you want my more in-depth thoughts about these topics that I cover, I do write a newsletter. You can subscribe in the link in the description. Okay, number 7, and by far the biggest mistake that I see when people are trying to use intermittent fasting for weight loss is too many carbohydrates in the diet. I know nobody likes hearing it. I get a lot of pushback for this one, but I stand behind it entirely. The thing is that most of us who struggled with our weight, the reason that we do is because we ate too many carbohydrates for too long. We therefore developed insulin resistance. Therefore, we must reverse insulin resistance if we want to have any chance of losing the weight and keeping it off. And the way that we do that is twofold. 1, we eat less frequently, and 2, we eat less carbohydrates since they are the primary culprit in our diet for spiking our sugar and therefore our insulin. The most common thing that I get asked is, how low do I have to go? Because nobody wants to lower the carbohydrates in their diet, in my experience. Again, it is highly dependent on you, on your level of insulin resistance, on how much body fat you have to lose, your exercise level, etc. For me, I must keep my carbohydrates down pretty low. Under 30 is where I keep them, but I don't know where you need to keep them. That is something that each of us must figure out on our own through trial and error. There are a couple ways to figure that out on your own. One way is to track your food and start to see how many carbs you're eating now and then start pulling them down until things start working again. The second way, and my favorite, is to wear a continuous glucose monitor so that you can actually see on your own body in real time how the foods that you're eating affect your blood sugar. And if you keep it down, you're more likely to get that weight off with fasting. Make good choices.